I wasn't going to buy coffee for an entire month. Sounds simple, right? That's what I thought too. But this little decision snowballed into something that completely transformed how I think about money. And I'm still shocked by what happened just 30 days later. Listen, I've tried every budgeting app and savings challenge out there. Nothing stuck. But this no spend challenge that's been blowing up on social media, it's different in ways I never expected. Not because of how much money I saved, but because of what it forced me to confront about myself. Let me show you exactly what happened when I stopped spending money on non-essentials for 30 days, including the 3 massive mistakes I made, the unexpected moment that almost broke me on day 18, and the psychological shift that's worth more than any dollar amount I saved. The challenge that found me. I didn't go looking for this challenge. It found me. I was mindlessly scrolling through TikTok one night when I saw someone talking about how they saved over $500 in a month by doing the no spend challenge. My first thought? Yeah, right. But then I checked my bank statement. I had spent $137 on coffee shop visits alone the previous month. That's when it hit me. I had no idea where my money was actually going. The challenge rules were straightforward. No spending on non-essentials for 30 days. Pre-planned bills and necessary groceries allowed. Document everything, both the money saved and how you feel. Find free alternatives to your usual spending habits. It sounded doable, even a little basic, but I was so wrong. I decided to start on the first of the month. I withdrew $200 in cash for essential groceries, put my credit cards in a Tupperware container filled with water, and then froze it. Dramatic? Yes. Effective? Absolutely. The first week, autopilot spending. The first thing I noticed wasn't the savings. It was how often I reached for my wallet without thinking. I literally caught myself walking toward the coffee shop on my way to work out of sheer habit. My body was on autopilot. Day 3 was eye-opening. I was having a rough morning and instinctively opened the DoorDash app. I had already selected my usual breakfast sandwich when I remembered the challenge. That was the first moment I realized this wasn't just about money. It was about breaking unconscious patterns. By day 5, I started keeping track of almost spends, moments when I would have spent money if not for the challenge. In just that one day, I counted 7 instances. Morning coffee, $4.75. Snack from the vending machine, $1.50. New song on iTunes, $1.29. Lunch out with coworkers, $14. Random Amazon purchase, a book I needed, $12.99. App subscription renewal, $5.99. Convenience store stop for drinks, $8.50. That's nearly $50 in a single day on things I typically wouldn't even remember buying. The weekly total of almost spends came to $212.43, money that stayed in my account instead of disappearing into the ether. But something else was happening too. Without my usual spending habits, I felt weirdly anxious, like something was missing. I was learning that many of my purchases weren't about the things themselves. They were about filling emotional gaps or creating little dopamine hits throughout my day. Week 2, the replacement strategy. As week 2 began, the initial novelty wore off, and reality set in. This wasn't just a cute little savings experiment anymore. I was facing my relationship with consumption head-on. I found myself getting irritable. The afternoon coffee run wasn't just about caffeine, it was my mental break, my little escape from the workday. Without it, I felt trapped at my desk. That's when I realized I needed a replacement strategy. If I simply removed all these little treats without alternatives, I'd never stick with this challenge. I made a list of my top spending triggers and free alternatives. Coffee shop, $5. Home brewed coffee in a nice travel mug, plus short walk outside. Lunch out, $15. Meal prepped lunch eaten in the park instead of at my desk. Online shopping, varies. 15-minute creative project or reading session. Convenience store stops, $8. Prepared snack boxes from home. Weekend brunches, $25. Homemade special breakfast with properly set table. Streaming movie rentals, $6. Library card and free streaming services. The replacements weren't about deprivation. They were about intentionality. I wasn't saying no to coffee. I was saying yes to a different kind of coffee experience that didn't cost $5 a cup. By the end of week 2, something unexpected happened. I started enjoying some of my alternatives more than the original habits. My morning ritual of manually brewing coffee while listening to a podcast became something I looked forward to. It wasn't just about saving $5. It was actually more satisfying. My almost spends for week 2 totaled $187.65. That's $400 saved in just 2 weeks without feeling deprived. The breaking point, day 18. They say it takes 21 days to form a habit, But day 18 nearly broke me. I got a promotion at work, something I'd been working toward for months. My first instinct? I need to celebrate by buying something. I literally found myself in my car, driving toward the mall with no specific purchase in mind, just the vague notion that spending money was how I should mark this achievement. Halfway there, I pulled over into a parking lot and just sat there. What was I doing? Why was spending money my automatic response to good news? I called my best friend instead, and we celebrated with a video chat. It cost nothing but meant everything. This was my biggest revelation. I had been using spending as an emotional regulator. Happy? Buy something to celebrate. Sad? Buy something to feel better. Bored? Buy something for entertainment. Anxious? Buy something for comfort. Money wasn't just currency, it was my coping mechanism. The final stretch, a new relationship with money. The last 10 days of the challenge were less about saving money and more about rebuilding my relationship with spending. I started asking myself 3 questions before any purchase. What need am I actually trying to meet? Is there a non-spending way to meet this need? If I must spend, what's the most intentional way to do it? These questions changed everything. I realized that when I was stressed at work, I wasn't craving a $6 smoothie. I was craving a break from my screen and some fresh air. The smoothie was just the excuse. By day 25, I developed a completely different awareness of my spending triggers. I could feel the impulse rising and recognize it for what it was. Sometimes I still wanted the thing, but now it was a conscious choice rather than an unconscious reaction. The challenge officially ended on day 30. The final tally of money not spent, $843.27. That's nearly $1,000 that would have vanished on forgettable purchases. But the number itself wasn't even the point anymore. What actually changed? Beyond the savings. It's been 3 months since the challenge ended, and I've kept many of the habits I developed. Not because I'm trying to save every penny, but because I genuinely prefer many of my new routines. The biggest changes weren't financial. They were psychological. First, I broke the automatic link between emotions and spending. I still celebrate good news and comfort myself through tough times, but shopping isn't my default response anymore. Second, I discovered what economists call hedonic adaptation, the human tendency to quickly return to a baseline level of happiness despite positive or negative changes. That $60 shirt that gave me a brief happiness spike, the joy faded within days, sometimes hours. But the contentment from finding non-material sources of pleasure, that lasted. Third, I realized how much of my spending was social signaling. The brand name coffee cup, the new clothes, the restaurant choices. So much of it was about communicating something about myself to others. Once I recognized this pattern, I could ask myself, is this purchase about the item itself or what I think it says about me? And fourth, perhaps most importantly, I rebuilt my sense of financial agency. Before the challenge, money was something that seemed to just flow through my life, appearing on payday and disappearing by the next. Now I direct that flow intentionally. The real ROI, life after the challenge. Here's where this story gets really interesting. The $843 I saved during the challenge itself was just the beginning. Without even trying to be extreme, my monthly expenses have decreased by about $600 compared to before the challenge. That's an extra $7,200 a year, enough for a decent emergency fund or vacation. I've redirected some of that money toward things that genuinely improve my quality of life. A membership to a climbing gym, which replaced many aimless shopping trips, cooking classes, cheaper than restaurants and more satisfying, and yes, sometimes still a coffee shop visit, but now as a planned treat rather than a mindless habit. My credit card debt is down by $2,400 since starting the challenge 3 months ago. Not because I'm obsessively focused on paying it off, but simply because I'm not adding to it anymore. But the most valuable change can't be measured in dollars. It's the mental clarity that comes from breaking the cycle of mindless consumption. It's the freedom from that constant background hum of financial anxiety. It's the space, both mental and physical, that comes from not constantly acquiring more stuff. What this challenge is really about. The viral no spend challenge isn't actually about not spending money. It's about becoming conscious of the unconscious. It's about reclaiming your relationship with not just your finances, but your emotions, your social signaling, and your genuine sources of satisfaction. My advice, if you want to try this challenge yourself, don't focus on restriction, focus on replacement and awareness. Keep track of almost spends to make your progress tangible. Look for the emotional needs behind your spending habits. Create meaningful alternatives that actually satisfy those needs. Be compassionate with yourself when you slip up. This is about progress, not perfection. The money challenge changed my life, not because I saved a specific amount, but because it completely rewired how I think about consumption, happiness, and what I actually need versus what I've been conditioned to want. If this video helped you see money differently, hit subscribe to follow my journey as I explore more unconventional wisdom about personal finance.